Tattoo Traditions is a podcast dedicated to the history of tattooing and those that have made significant contributions towards it. This month we're back with a bang talking to the brilliant Sean Hobden. Sean was born on a traveller site in Kent in the 1960s. He remembers his grandad having a tattoo which was done in a tent in World War II. His story is absolutely amazing. We talked about his tattoo career, his book, fairground sign painting, old-time legends like Jeff Baker and much more. We want to say thank you to his son Josh for helping set this one up. Sean?
Hello, Jack.
Hello, mate. How you doing?
All right. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you perfect. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I'm not very technical, so you have to bear with me on things like this.
Oh, don't worry, mate. I'll tell you what, it's amazing when it works.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah, all good, mate.
Good.
Thank you, yeah.
Good. No, I'm glad. I'm glad we set this up because I've been wanting to talk to you for a little while, actually. So I'm
Okay.
I'm glad that Josh helped set it up. To be honest.
All right. Okay, mate. How does it work? Do you ask me questions or?
Yeah, that's it.
What?
Usually, so basically, Sean. Usually, it's just bit of an informal chat about your sort of life and career within tattooing. But particularly wanted to talk to you because I read your book, the first book, and I know how into the history side of it you are as well as actually tattooing yourself. So that's why I wanted to talk to you because it's like you're seeing at it from both angles. So usually I sort of ask people to start at the beginning and if you have your like an earliest memory of seeing a tattoo.
Oh yeah, right. I can do that. It'll take a long time.
Go for it, mate. We've got as long as you want.
Yeah. Okay, because people usually ask a question like, "Why was you a tattooist? What attracted you to it?" Well, and the short answer, people say, "Oh, I like it," or "I saw one of my uncles as a sailor," or whatever. But I've led an interesting, colourful life, and a lot built up to it for me wanting to be a tattooist. So I'll start at the beginning if you like, and it'll build up to the tattooing. But I'll start right at the very beginning, right? I was born in the early 1960s on a traveller site in Kent, and my dad was from farming family in Sussex, and he wasn't very good at reading or writing, but he was very, very knowledgeable. He could live off the land. Like I used to catch rabbits with him when we were young. He used to bring them back, cut the head off with an axe and the feet off, and that he would skin them, gut them, and my mum would put them in the pot. We used to eat a lot of pigeons. We used to catch eels, and my mum used to cook them, jellied eels. So I had a good, happy child. My mum went to school, so she could read and write, and she did her nursing training, which had to stop because she got pregnant with me. But we moved into an house when I was 4. Now, up until then, my dad was out all day in a lorry, and my mum was in the fruit fields of Kent. She went fruit picking all through the year. She picked everything throughout the whole season, and she took me with her. And I can remember them times. A lot of people, if I tell them, they will say. They will think that they can't remember before they were 4, so they'll naturally think I can't, but I can. And one of the reasons I can is because I've got a daughter that's now she's 14 with autism, and I've had to study the human mind to try and help get in her mind to help her. And I've learned that I'm slightly autistic, and one of the positive autistic traits I've got is I've got a very long memory. I can't remember what I did yesterday, but I've got a very good, clear, sharp, long memory, and I can remember a lot of times, places, dates, which is handy for things like this.
Yeah, it's great for stuff like this.
Yeah, I can remember who was doing what when, and moved into an house when I was 4. We moved into on a council estate, and it was near Tunbridge Wells. And it was a nice one, you know, and nice people and everything. And the people I grew up with were the boys my own age that I grew up with. They were from travelling families. And the family we moved in next door to, they were Brazils, which is a travelling family. And my granddad, they were already connected to us and known to us. Although we didn't know them, my granddad knew their older generations, and he knew their family and their relatives and that. So we all sort of mixed up then into one big family, because they had a scrap metal business, well established, good scrap metal business that we all helped out in. Us kids loaded the lorry of scrap. My granddad was helping with scrap. My uncles. Now this round started up in the 1940s or 50s from scratch. What used to happen is they went round all the factories and they asked people for metal. We used to call it munging the metal. Most people, the scrap dealers, they didn't want to pay for it, so they begged it, or worse, they stole it. But we learned that if you paid for it, we actually gave them people wanted us, so they would be ringing us up saying we got skips, loads of scrap, come and get it. So this was built up through the 60s and 70s. Now, in the late 60s, early 70s, and before, scrapyards were very hostile places. Only we went in them. Like you always had like a fierce dog on a chain, which was, there was no Rottweilers or pit bulls or anything like that then. So there was always an Alsatian. But scrapyards, they sort of had dogs that were like a different breed of Alsatian. They looked like they was a cross between a wolf and a bear. You know, you didn't mess with them. You kept away from them. And like you had posters up like of bare knuckle fights, which the public didn't see that side of life. You know, it was like a secret world. Some of the fights were in the scrapyards. I never saw them when I was young like that, but only we went in there. Like today, if a plumber's got a load of scrap metal, he'll just take it in himself because they're friendly. It's all modern now. But in our time, only we went in there. So if a plumber had a load of scrap, he would actually bring it to us. We were like middlemen. My uncle, I can remember. Yeah. My uncle would get bathroom scales out, and he would weigh them and pay them, and then we would take it in ourselves. Now, if a plumber or someone was brave enough to go in the scrapyard themselves, they wouldn't get paid the same price as us, because the people that owned the scrapyards knew that we was doing it for a living, and we took in much more day in, day out, you know, and an occasional user, they would get, you know, they might even get less than we would pay them. So, you know, so that was the type of upbringing I had, and like I met a lot of characters, you know. So like we mixed with second-hand car dealers, you know, showmen, market men. You know, as a young boy, we used to, our family traditions were going to the Epsom Derby, where everyone else was at school, you know. So we were, and then it was much more lively then. Again, only certain people went there, and there was all sorts of sights. Now, touching on the tattooing, because in the early days of tattooing, showman tattooing all mixed up. And you had sign writing as well. I was always interested in the fairground sign writing. So in the 70s, the big star of fairground sign writing was a man called Fred Fowl, and you'll see his work all around the fairground. Beautiful work, absolutely loved it. But before him, there was a man called Edwin Hall. Now, if you look in books and that, he was he used to paint scenic railways, like big jungle scenes and all this beautiful fairground art. Well, when I first used to go around the Derby in the early 70s, some of them old rides were from the 40s and 50s, so I was privileged to see the actual Edwin Hall work when it was actually working on the fairground, So I witnessed all that, and I saw a very colourful sort of secret world. Now, nobody in my family were tattooed, but apart from my granddad, and he had one, just one. He had it was a heart with a dagger through it, and all the red was gone. And he explained to us that he had it done in a tent in the Second World War, and he fought on the front line, my granddad. So he apparently around this time it wasn't unusual for tattooists to work in tents, so there would have been a lot of tents. It's a pity we can't question him more now, because the tattoo historians in the UK, you've got Jimmy Scouse, Rambo in Manchester, and Lionel Titchener. Have you interviewed any of them yet?
Yeah, I know Rambo because I work in his shop when I go to Manchester.
All right.
I don't really know Jimmy, and I've tried writing letters to Lionel, but I haven't heard anything back. But I do know Paul Sace as well. So.
Okay, yeah, and Paul, I nearly forgot Paul. So them four, they're all friends of mine, all of them, and between us, we might have been able to pinpoint who done my granddad's tattoo, but unfortunately he's not here. But so that was, but before, I mean, obviously I sort of just saw the tattoo on his arm, but it was very unremarkable, and it didn't really do anything.
Was Charles Dick one of the ones, Sean, that tattooed in a tent in the war? Was it Charles Dick?
He might have done. He's from up north, wasn't he? I don't. Yeah, he was from up. Charlie Dick was up from up north, but a lot tattooed in tents around that time. Yeah. So, my first thing of tattooing. One of the families that I grew up with on the council estate, their dad was what we considered at that time heavily tattooed, but heavily tattooed has a different definition then, because nobody got sleeved and not many people had them on their hands or neck or anything like that. So if you had one on each forearm and one on each upper arm and one on your leg and a couple on your inside your forearms, you were considered heavily tattooed at that time in the late 60s, early 70s.
That's funny looking back on it now, though, Sean, isn't it? When you see people now.
It is, yeah. And he had an outline of a big angel on his back, and his tattoos were done by Les Burchett in Waterloo and Charlie Bell in Chatham. Now, it was probably the Charlie Bell that I knew, but it could have even been his dad, Charlie Bell Sr. So those were who his tattoos were done by. But we used to walk round us kids used to walk around the local sweet shop, buy sweets when we had money, which wasn't very often, but we used to go in it and we used to buy bubble gum, and they had tattoos inside them.
Oh yeah, I've seen pictures of them.
Yeah, well, we used to buy them, and we got this chewing gum, a bubble gum it was called then, and my mate said, we're going to buy some tattoos. And I said, tattoos? What's a tattoo? He said, you don't know what a tattoo is? And he explained it to me. He said, me dad's got them. And then I remembered my granddad. I said, oh yeah. So we bought these tattoos and we used to stick them on us. But I now know that later on, one of the blokes in the 70s that drew the tattoos was, for the bubble gum, was a tattooist from Denmark. I think it was Ole Hansen.
Ole Hansen, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, he drew the designs for them.
Kind of makes sense, actually, because if they're the ones that I'm thinking of, you can kind of tell they look like that. It's that sort of style, isn't it?
Yeah. They were a little bit of an influence on me. You know, you stuck them on your arm, but then this guy's older brother. We used to go down to. I mean, it's traditional in the southeast of England to go to the nearest coastal resort, and people from East London and Essex used to go to Southend, and South London and us used to go to Hastings or sometimes Brighton, but mainly Hastings. And down Hastings there was another travelling bloke in there called Leighton Lee who did the tattoos, and that's what really hooked me on the tattoos. He had a little booth, and the combination of the buzzing of the needles and the flash on the walls, I was instantly hooked. What attracts me mainly to a tattoo is its shape, and the pointed wings of the serpents and the eagles and the swallows, the pointy shapes, the shape of a tattoo is what always attracted me to tattooing. And ironically, when you have a nice big traditional tattoo on your arm with big pointy wings and that, and then you get sleeved, it takes that shape away. You lose the shape and that, and then it's a shame.
Loses some of its impact.
Yeah, it loses a lot of it, in my opinion, to my eyes and my way of thinking and seeing it. It loses that impact, the shape gets lost. So I was like fascinated. So I watched the tattooist working, and this would have been very early 70s, and I was decided there and then that's what I wanted to do.
He was in Hastings, Sean, sorry. He was in Hastings.
It was, yes, Leighton Lee, his name was. He later took on there weren't any apprenticeships in tattooing then, but he did take on a young boy called Pip Boswell, who was another bloke from another travelling family. So they were all travellers. Leighton Lee was a traveller. Pip Boswell was a traveller. I think Pedro in Swindon used to go down there and tattoo there. A mate of mine, he got a tattoo there when he was 15, because there was no laws in tattooing whatsoever before 1969. And then when before 1969, when the Tattooing and Minors Act come in, where it said you shouldn't tattoo anyone under 18, the tattooists went by their own moral code, what most tattooists believed in. If you've left work and you're working, then you're big enough and ugly enough to get a tattoo.
Okay.
So a lot of people left school at 14, 15. So then they thought they were fair game to tattoo. So by the 70s, this was over 1969, but some of them were still working to that. If they'd been tattooing 20, 30 years, it was a hard habit to break out. They used to get chatting to you to find out you left school, you're working or whatever. They would go by their own ways, and tattooists did anyway. We had our own ways of dealing with life. We were like not mainstream then. We were living all like, this is why it fitted in with me. My world was scrap metal dealers, used car salesmen, antique dealers, rag and bone men, that type of thing. Anyone that was living outside of was living independently, a maverick.
Yeah,
that's it, a maverick on the fringe. you're sitting on the fence. You can go in what side, out as deep as you like. And when you're on the edges of the underworld, you can go in as deep as you like. You know, you get offered stuff, and you know, deals and things, and you choose. You say, no, that's a bit too heavy for me. You know, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime. And we didn't like prison. Touch wood, none of my family went to prison because we didn't go in. You know, we sort of like looked down on. Yeah, we had our limits. We looked down on people that were thieves, because we were clever enough to buy and sell and deal and make our own money. We was always interested in anything like that, you know, cash. So, and I was always drawing. I was good at art. I liked the fairground art. So this job attracted me because it was sort of from my world sort of thing. Yeah, and you know, like today, you know, we still look down on people that need to steal, you know, and you know, there's a modern saying that someone who nicks a lot, you say like, yeah, he pulls a chain and nicks the dog off the end. That man, you know, but he wouldn't have pulled the dogs on the end of it, on the chains of the scrapyard dogs. Yeah,
no, bloody hell, no one was going near them, were they?
That's it. So, yeah, so that was what attracted me to tattooing, really. Yeah, so that's how. And then I did something that went right against the grain. I didn't know how to be a tattooist, and then no tattooist would. There was no apprenticeships. There was no books on tattooing. Absolutely nothing. It was easier to get in the magic circle, or it was easier to, you know, if you said like, I'm going to go to drama school and I'm going to be on Coronation Street or something, that would have been easier than being a tattooist. Yeah, you'd have a better chance. So I didn't have a clue how to be a tattooist. When I left school with no qualifications, you know. So the only route for people like me was crime, or you had to be self-employed, you know. So I went against the grain. I joined the army, you know, the total opposite of what. But anyway, I did my time. I did a few years there, learnt a few skills, and I started tattooing as a hobby. That was my way. You know, I started getting tattoos, and I used to watch the men tattoo me. Or I used to see tattoos, and no disrespect to the tattoos, but I used to look at some of them and think, well, I can do that, or I can do better than that. So I thought, you know, this is what I want to do. So I was getting tattooed, but the tattooists that were tattooing me were my type of tattooists. They were tattooing queues of soldiers on payday.
Right, yeah, of course.
So that is the tattooing I was introduced to, and also before that when I used to watch them down the coast. So everyone was a fast tattooist then. You know, you had to be quick. There was no taking your time. I mean, I remember Joe Cleverley. Have you heard of Joe Cleverley?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, down from the Arches in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
He told me himself. He told me, he said he used to work in Blackpool before Portsmouth, and he said if an artist worked in my shop and he couldn't do a swallow in under 5 minutes, he said he was just not good to me. You know? So that gives you an idea of the speed you had to work at, you know. And I was sitting in a queue as a customer being tattooed by, you know, army type payday tattooists. And another thing, you had to work fast. And when I opened my own shop, a lot of tattooists at that time wrongly thought that other tattooists were their competition. Now, there was hardly any of us about, so they weren't really.
No.
what our competition was whores, the bookies, anyone's doing gambling or the pub.
Yeah.
Because our customers went in all them places, and if they went in there before they got to us, then people they took all their money off them, and we wouldn't get it. So we had to, on Army Payday, we had to tattoo the soldiers before they wasted their money on other stuff.
That's hard to compete with those things, Sean. They're quite attractive, those other things.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, they would go in there and find us in there and pull us out of there to tattoo them. But so how I started was somehow on leave by a miracle, I managed to get hold of some tattoo equipment. No professional tattooist would tell you out where to get the gear. The only way to get it was to nick it, and I wasn't a thief, and I had too much respect for them anyway, so I'd never have nicked their gear. But I managed to speak a scratcher. We found a scratcher who gave us her address to one of the lowest, worst suppliers. Everybody, no matter what they tell, there was no apprenticeship then. We were all self-taught. We all looked down on kitchen scratchers, but we all started as kitchen scratchers.
Yeah,
everyone
was
scratching when they started.
But it was more like a necessity. That was necessity, though, wasn't it, Sean? Because you didn't really have enough.
It was the only way in.
Yeah.
Every tattooist was self-taught, all of them, with a very few exceptions. A friend of mine, Andy in Rochester, Charlie Bell's son-in-law, he was taught by Charlie Bell.
Well, that's it. It would be handed down, wouldn't it?
And, yeah, that's it. And the Scooses, they handed it down. The Wrigleys, the Bell, Charlie Bell, he learnt from his father. So there was a few exceptions, but the vast majority in the country of tattooists had to teach themselves. And if they didn't have the gear, they had to make the gear. So a lot of stuff was homemade, but I wasn't too good at making homemade stuff. But what you did is you traded. You see, once you got in, if you were good at making machines, you might not be. You could swap your machines with someone who's good at drawing flash, or someone was specifically good at making nice clip cords or something. You could trade with them. You see, so
that's where the wheeler and dealer in you's coming out, Sean.
Well, it had to. All tattooists were wheelers and dealers because I'm coming to that because you had to be a combination of everything,
right?
Because so you were self-taught, and so I self-taught myself in the army, and how I started off was I said to my mates, "Look, I've never done this before." They knew anyway because I said, "But I'll practice on you for free as long as you let me practice on you." And I was in a regiment with a load of mad jocks, and they were all boozed all the time. And they said, "If you ain't going to charge us, you've got an unlimited supply of canvas." So like I had the perfect place to learn. I had a regiment full of soldiers to practice on. So as I got, you can imagine it was horrendous to start with, but as I got a bit better, I started charging them just to cover costs, inks, and then as I got better than that, I started to charge them a bit more and made a profit. And then I built it up till in the end, I was putting all of my army wages in the UK bank account, and I was living off the money I was getting from tattooing, because the army paid your board and your food, so you only had to please your bollocks, really. All your money went on booze and tattoos. So I was saving my money and I was living off tattooing money, and I thought, when I leave the army, I'm going to open a tattoo shop. And that was my plan. I was going to open a tattoo shop, see. So that's exactly what I did. I came out the army at 21 and I opened a high street tattoo shop. Now, at them times, very hard to rent a tattoo shop because rents were too dear for most tattooists, because a tattoo, you could only work it half the year sensibly. It was very seasonal. And now you can work a tattoo shop the whole year round. But then it was a summer thing. You earned double bubble in the summer, and you had to be careful with money to get you through the winter. So if you could find somewhere to rent, it would be in a back street, it would be in a basement, it would be above a shop, it would be anywhere but the high street. So if you could find a high street shop that you could afford, usually the landlord wouldn't rent it to you. You know, it would say, it would welcome you with open arms. Yes, you can rent my shop. You can start on Monday morning. Here's the keys. And then oh, by the way, what you want it for? Tattooing. Oh, no. We're going to have the Hells Angels here. We're going to have drunks. We're going to have everyone here we don't want. No way. So it was very hard. But by a combination of my family went calling round the shops they knew, antique dealers and all that. And we found a place in the basement, an antique dealer we knew that was willing to rent to us. So I said, I want to do this all properly above board. So I put in for planning permission and all that, got it turned down. And then I said, that ain't the way to do it. So, and this is always in our sort of world we live in, you always have to bend the rules. We try initially to start doing things properly. The whole world was always against us, you know. So we found a high street shop, and I opened it, and I didn't ask for planning permission this time. I learned that the hard way, you know, tried to do it all properly. So I just opened it, and you know, my elders always said to me, it's better to ask forgiveness than to ask for permission. Yeah. So bearing that in mind, I opened this tattoo shop. Right from day one, there was a queue round the block, because up until then, there was only tattooists on the coast or in a military town. In fact, there was only 2 tattooists in Kent.
Oh, was there?
There was Charlie Bow in Chatham, because he had the military town around him. He had the Royal Engineers, and he was on the docks and all that. And then you had Painless Jeff in Deal in Kent, and he had the Royal Marines there as well. So they were the only 2 in Kent. And then everyone thought I was out of my... And I could see there was a market for tattooing, you know, because everyone was travelling to these places. We had Hastings on the coast, which I've already mentioned, but that wasn't Kent, that was in Sussex. So you had Hastings, you had Brighton in Sussex, the big cities in Kent, Maidstone, Canterbury, didn't have tattooists. So I opened up my tattoo shop, and I had a 50-mile radius around me. So it was, or 40-mile radius around me, I should say. So it was brilliant from day one. I never looked back, you know. And the planning people, they came round to give me grief, you know, and they saw that it was all professional and I'd done a good job and that, and it was busy, and they thought they just give me planning permission. They give it to me in the end. And then, I after like 5 years of working there, I had a solid business. I rented the shop, and the landlord said, we're retiring now, we're selling it. So I said, okay, fine, I'll buy it. So I didn't have the money in cash to buy it at that time, and so I went to the bank, and they wouldn't lend me the money because it was too dear.
Right.
The landlord's being greedy. They're lending you. They want too much. And I thought, well, that's all right. I don't mind paying over the odds for it, because I can earn that money. And So, but they wouldn't lend it on the building. They said the building ain't worth that, so we won't lend it to you. So I looked around, and just up the road I found something bigger, better, less money, and I bought that. and I bought that before I moved into it. So I finished off there. I did 5 years to the day in a high street shop, and I moved into another high street shop, and I still own it now. Josh is still working there.
Amazing.
But I've been there over 30 years. But so that, you know, we own that outright, so that all worked. But at that time when I first opened a tattoo shop, all tattooists weren't judged so much on how good they was. They was judged whether they had a shop or not, because it was so hard to get a shop. The first question, if you went to a tattoo meeting or something, was, have you got a shop? And if you had a shop, you had instant respect, you was in. If you didn't, people looked down on you. And there was some very good tattooists at the time that didn't have a shop. But they always had a bit of a stigma about them just because they didn't have a shop. But they could tattoo and knock the spots off some professional tattooists that were, by today's standards, scratchers, you know. So it was all on whether you had a shop or not. And I was lucky enough to find a high street shop. So yeah. I was in, and then I was accepted because I had a shop. I was sort of halfway in, or 3/4 of the way in. And then there weren't many tattooists about, and the ones that spoke to me were old timers. And then when they liked the fact that I'd been in the army, because at that time all tattooists had served in the services, the armed forces. They were either in the army or the navy, because they had to do national service, see?
Right.
So a lot of the younger tattooists that hadn't been in the army and they didn't have a shop, and they didn't want to know them, you know. You know, their attitude was, you're not one of us.
Okay.
But with my young age, I was only 21, my face fitted with them. And then they start telling you things and inviting you to places. And I was in the inner circle of the old timers from day one.
Oh, amazing. So good.
And I was privileged. I had the minds of the pioneers of UK tattooing. You know, if they're the generation before, they were 1950s tattooists, and before them, like Charlie Bell, his dad would have been 1930s, 40s tattooists. You know, so you're getting on to the turn of the century, not the one just come, the one before. And they, you know, they were very interesting people. And I always said, well, I was going to do what you're doing now. I said, I've got to go round and interview these old tattooists. But I never did it. I never got round to do it, partly because I was too busy tattooing.
Yeah, because you had a busy street shop.
I should have done it in the winter, though, looking back. But I did. Long story, I didn't do it. And then the book, why I wrote the book was, I didn't really want to write it. I always look back, I'd rather someone else wrote it. So I'm hoping that someone like Painless Jeff wrote it, who was a brilliant writer, because he used to run the ETAA magazine.
That, actually. Yeah, I've heard
and if you read the old ETAA magazines, very witty man, very, you know, he should have wrote it. So I sat back and waited for someone to write it, and nobody did. And I thought, if I don't do it, that little period of history, the late 20th century, the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, if no one does it, that little bit of history is going to be lost. That's why I did it. So, and since you read it, I've updated it, I've tidied it up, because there was a lot of, if anyone who's got the 2012 first one, it's got a lot of, you know, spelling mistakes because I rushed it and put it out too quick. But the latest one, because it's had a few updates, but the 2020 update, hopefully I've killed nearly all the spelling mistakes. There's probably one or two in there somewhere, but and also, yeah, but I've put a few photos in now.
Yeah, I saw that.
Andy J generously sent me some photos of Charlie Bell's collection, some rare, you know, there's original photos from Cash Cooper.
Oh, wow.
Because they were friends, they were good friends with Charlie. Cash Cooper. I didn't know Cash Cooper, but I knew I was close to people that did. You know, Charlie Bow knew him. Andy J had met him or knew him or at least met him. Cockney Paul, who was a good friend of mine.
Oh, of course.
Worked with Cash Cooper, you know, so Paul always had a lot of stories about Cash. So
where did Cockney Paul work, Sean?
Well, he worked in Manchester when he was working with Cash Cooper, and he worked in Piccadilly in Manchester.
Oh, right.
And then he came down, he moved back down this way, and he opened a shop in Romford. And I visited him in Romford, yeah. And funny story there is he didn't want to apply for planning permission or couldn't get planning permission because it was, you know, that it was still a time when they didn't want tattooists. So he just put a load of dealer boots in his shop window and like sort of half moded. It was a boot shop, but really it was a tattoo shop. You walked in this boot shop to buy a pair of boots, there's tins of shoe polish in the window, and it would be just a normal street tattoo shop covered in flash everywhere. You know, you couldn't get a postage stamp on Paul's wall. He had beautiful flash everywhere. You know, good. He was a good, fast tattooist.
Was he painting that flash, Sean, or was it he got it from someone?
Yeah, we all had. Most of us got our flash from someone else, but we all had to paint it ourselves because it didn't come coloured like it does now. You a lot drew. We had most of us. A few drew all their flash. Most of us, it was a combination. When we all started off self-taught. We couldn't afford to buy it, a lot of us, so we had to draw it. And then as we could afford to buy better flash, we bought it, but it only come as line drawings. You had to shade it and paint it yourself. Now, so that made it unique, even if you didn't draw it. Like you would have a standard, say, eagle that Roy Proudlove might have originally drew, and then you painted it in your own unique way, so that you would see. That's how we knew who had tattooed what. Firstly, there was very few tattooists, and then everyone's designs were unique. Everyone did the standards, the swallows, the eagles, the panthers in their own way. You know, like for example, Jack Ringo would always colour in the wings of anything solid green. You know, so if he had an eagle, the wings would be solid green. If he did a swallow, the wings solid green. Pegasus, horse, wings solid green. So immediately you see a solid green
signature, isn't it? It's like a little signature.
Yeah, it was. So you would point out, oh, Jack did that, Jack Ringo, and the
clever
customer would be absolutely amazed. How did you know that?
Yeah,
you know? But everyone had their own way of. I think Jack drew his own flash. But most of us, it was a combination, drawing my own and buying it in. But when you bought it, everyone had the Graham Townsend or Roy Proudlove flash. Every tattooist wall had it on the wall, but it was all coloured how you did it, and then that's how you could. And you always altered it slightly. Yeah, you altered it slightly. You know, like you had maybe an eagle that looked like it had flown into a brick wall with a bent beak or a flat beak or something. You know, later when Graham drew the small little dolphins in the 90s, when tattoos started getting popular with women, all them little dolphins looked like someone had punched them on the nose. Yeah. Like, you know, they weren't meant to look like that. And
that's all their charm, Sean, isn't it? That's their charm.
That's it. And all the little round red sun behind them looked like a football that had been kicked, you know, had a big dent in the side, you know. So that was 90s tattooing. 90s tattooing was brilliant. That was when it started going mainstream then. And all the trendy people that are now probably old timers themselves, they were trying to get established on when computers first come out on MySpace. And we was already well established, so we had them queuing around the block when all these new people were trying to get established, opening shops. They were apprentices of apprentices, and they were trying to get established on MySpace. And we was, we are absolutely so busy you couldn't handle the work. The wiser ones of us, we just the queues, we just said, like, you got to come back next week. And every Saturday you was doing the queue of last week that had cottoned on, that if you don't get there at 7, 8 o'clock in the morning and start queuing for a 10 o'clock opening, you ain't getting a tattoo. So everyone would turn up the first week at 10 only to find a massive queue. So I'd think they'd just go home and they'd come back next week earlier. But people tattooists not so wise, think, I need help. I can't handle the queue. I need a helper. So I've got to take on an apprentice. Of course, that opened the floodgates. Once you took on an apprentice, the apprentice would think, like, why am I working for this guy? I could be doing it. I could have my own shop. They opened their own shops. They took on more apprentices. And they never learned. They couldn't handle the queues. A tattooist, to open a shop, you had to be an entrepreneur, you had to be an expert on the hygiene, you had to be a lonely art, you had to be every job under the sun, because you was a one-man band, and you had to run up until the 90s when people started taking on apprentices because they couldn't handle the queues. We were handling
you all
the queues.
Worked on your own, didn't you? Yeah, I think
we all worked on our own. A lot
of people wouldn't necessarily understand that now, that like listen to these discussions, because there's, when you look at shops now, there's often like 4 or 5 people working in there, but
well, there's more people in one tattoo shop now than the whole of the county.
Yeah,
I can remember. Most towns didn't have a tattooist, with the exception of military towns or coast. So like said, if you weren't on the coast or you weren't a military town, you didn't have a tattooist.
It's pointless.
I can remember speaking to Lionel on the phone once, and he said, it's now getting to the stage where there's going to be a tattooist in every town.
And you were like, right.
Now there's like 20 in every town, and then there's 20 in every shop.
Wow. So one of them that I remember we talked about was all the tattoo meetups that you would go to, and the sort of, I guess the people that you met through doing the tattoo meetups. So, can you talk a bit about maybe the first one you went to, and then sort of go from there, really?
That's right. Let me try and think. The first organised one I went to was in 1984 at Buxton. That was put on by Lionel Titchener's Tattoo Club of Great Britain. It was very small by today's standards, but it was mainly the tattoo conventions then were aimed for tattooists rather than the public. So you would never ever get a tattoo convention on a Saturday, because that was, most people were working walk-ins then, and Saturdays was always your busiest day, so no tattooists would turn up. So they was generally on a Sunday and Monday. That convention in '84 I went to, there's lots of people there I knew, tattooists. Ed Hardy actually worked that one. He came over from America. That's the first time I'd ever seen him, and he was probably the biggest name in tattooing then in '84. I remember because the Americans, it's all merged into one now, but they were always in front of us. Ed was wearing gloves which looked a bit strange, and he was using all disposable stuff, What I remember, tattooists always mumbled, and I could hear, we all crowd round new tattooists and that. Not that Ed Hardy was new, but anyone that was new on the scene, we would watch them to try and learn something, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And I remember tattooist mumbling, Christ, if we worked like that in the UK, we'd have to charge £100 to do a swallow. You know, which swallows them were, some tattoos were charging 50p, but a swallow was probably about £4 then. I think swallow was £4,
wow.
which was considered quite expensive. But, you know, he was using a new razor for everyone and that. You know, we used to just stand our razors in like a glass of Dettol or Savlon or something, you know, disposable ones, use them again.
Yeah.
Some tattooists use a cutthroat and just, you know, just used it on everybody. So, but it opened our eyes, and I'm glad to say we took it all on board, you know.
Oh, wow.
You know, the next convention, you know, everyone's wearing gloves. So that was probably the turning point when we started wearing gloves, I think.
Blimey.
About mid-80s. When I started tattooing, no one wore gloves. You know, all the blood and that dripped off your hands, the ink.
Yeah.
You know, us hygienic people, you know, we washed our hands between customers.
Yeah.
Some didn't even bother doing that, you know. It was crazy looking back how we worked and that, you know.
Blimey.
So we're on conventions, aren't we? Yeah. So that was the 84 one.
Yeah.
And then Lionel, I think his first one was in 81, and then the last one was in 86, which was Kenilworth. I've got a good memory, by the way, for dates and figures and all that.
It's amazing.
And then 86 was the first expo which we had at Hammersmith Palais.
Sure.
Yeah, so that ran 87. The first one was at Dunstable. So it was 86 was the Hammersmith Palais, and then 87 Dunstable, and then the Dunstable ones started, which were very successful.
Yeah, sure, I've heard about that.
If I remember rightly, Hammersmith and the first Dunstable ones were on the Sunday and Monday, as I said before, but when they put the first one on a Saturday, that was a little bit controversial, because the old school was like to, you know, keep everything in-house, and when they put one on a Saturday, everyone knew they was aiming at the general public, you know.
Oh, I see what you mean,
yeah. Which raised a few eyebrows with some old timers. You know, there was a bit of a split thinking on it. Some people thought, you know, it's all a bit stale, we need to move it forward and open it up a bit more, get fresh blood in, you know, get it more popular. And others thought, no, let's stay in the past, keep it, you know, keep it secret and all that. You know, just different thinking on it. Nobody was right or wrong. It was just a different view on it.
Yeah, sure.
Generally, the people that couldn't draw and wanted to keep it, you know, as it was, because they knew they'd be out of a job as soon as real artists came into it, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
And then people thought, you know, we don't want to hold it back. Let's see how far we can take it. And now, like, you've got proper graphic artists into it, you know.
Yeah.
And when I started, the type people in it wouldn't have been interested in tattooing, because they thought there was no money in it for a start, and it was all low lifes, and you know, well, not low lifes, but more working class people.
Yeah, sure.
I take that back about low lifes. Don't want to offend all my friends, colleagues, and everybody. No, we was more working class, and the college people just had no interest in it whatsoever. Now it's the other way around, you know. Totally. All the graphic artists and that, you know, they all want to get into tattooing. So that's changed.
Dunstable was a bit of a tipping point, Sean, wasn't it, really? Because up until that point, it was mostly just meetups, wasn't it? Like you'd all sort of hang out and have a chat and see what each other was up to. But then that opened to the public, and that sort of set the actual blueprint for conventions after that, didn't it? Where it was open to the public.
that was the first public ones where anybody could just turn up. Wow. Yeah, we also had running against or running side by side Lionel's clubs. We had the ETAA run by Jeff Baker. It was Terry Wrigley had it, then he passed it over to Jeff Baker, and they had dues as well, but they were very old school and strictly only tattooists. You know, they didn't even like sort of any hangers on at all. It was all tattooists. So there was like a bit of conflict, you know, jealous rivalries and that with Lionel's club and that, but everybody ended up friends in the end, you know.
Yeah, sure.
When, you know, we all merged in the end, you know, Lionel used to go to the old timers tattoo dues and always a proper member, you know, and we used to go to his. You know, Lionel did a lot for tattooing.
Yeah, definitely.
Looking back, and the people that put on the conventions did a lot to move it forward to where it is today.
Yeah, sure. He had that little magazine as well, didn't he? He had that?
Yeah, that was very successful, and it was the only sort of one. There was the Tattoo Buzz, the ETAA's one.
That's right.
And what Terry Wrigley put out, and then Jeff Baker took it over, and then when Jeff got fed up with doing it, he handed it over to the people that were doing the tattoo expos.
Oh yeah, sure.
You know, so and that was it. They put a good magazine together. They changed the name because Jeff was giving them a bit of grief because, like Jeff does, he liked to have a row at that, you know, so he was always arguing and all that. So to sort of stop him, they changed the name of it to Actor, you know, sort of like, and that, but there was, well, try and, you know, say it's not yours anymore, like you've given the ball to us, let us run it sort of thing. But they put together a very good magazine, but they didn't put on any dues for the APTA. They stuck with the expo, and that was that. There was no sort of dues for the tattooists, you know. So that's when Jeff started the old timers, because he thought, well, there's nothing for tattooists, you know, it's all for the public. So he started the old timers in 1989, and there was a handful of us. We were all the old remnants, misfits, odds and sods left over from the ETAA. And you know, it's a good little club, still goes today.
I didn't realise he started that club, because I know that club exists and stuff. And
well, a few of us started. It all started off. I remember discussing it. It was in the I think it was in the Clarendon pub in Deal. We was having a bit. Jeff was always throwing parties. He was very hospitable. That's why he ran the ETA, and that he liked a good drink up with tattooists. So we had some blinding dudes. He would throw a party at any sort of excuse, but he would throw like triple parties. Like it would be his birthday, and then he would say, "Oh, it's my next door neighbour's birthday or my dog's birthday, so I'm having a big triple party." And we would all pile down to Deal and have the most outrageous piss-ups, you know. That was when pubs used to shut at 11, but they would get bullied into staying open all night, you know. People would threaten to smash the place up if they didn't stay open, stuff like that, you know. It was outrageous. And, like, if they had a piano, because Brian, God rest his soul, Brian Ingram, very good pianist, you know, we would just take over. We'd wheel the piano in and start a really proper knees up, you know. And if there wasn't a piano, there'd be people wheeling them up the road and nicking them and everything, you know. We'd get our hands on it somehow. I can remember Brian retuning one once. There was a piano in a backroom bar, And Brian stripped it all down. We thought, what's he doing? He's like taking the back off and he's banging all the keys and that, tuning it up. So we thought, well, but he's the expert. Let him do it. So that was, so where would I always lose me, Fred, because I get carried away on the side. But so we're all standing in this bar in the Clarendon, and Jeff said, we ought to have another club and that, and we're discussing the names of the club. I said we'll call it the Wavy Line Club or something, because no one could tattoo a straight line, so we'd call it the Wavy Line Tattoo Club or something. I'm only joking, there's good tattooists in our club, and stuff like that. So he said, we'll start up this club, the Old Timers, and there was a few of us, and then the next year I think we had one in Manchester. And a lot went to that,
what sort of names were people going to that one?
Jeff, that one in Manchester, Jeff Jaguar was there.
Amazing.
Let me think, who else was there? Of course, George Bone was there, and Rambo was there because he was just up the road. Cockney Paul, all the usuals. Wow. Ben Gunn. That was the one where Ben Gunn went into the wrong hotel and fell down the stairs.
Oh, bless him.
Yeah, because he arranged to meet his drinking buddy, Paul, Cockney Paul, arranged to meet in the bar of the hotel. But Ben was surprised that Paul hadn't turned up. So, anyway, he's fallen down the stairs, Ben, and he smashed a window or something. And the landlord said, "What's your name?" He said, "It's Ben Gunn." and then Arthur Bishop, King Arthur, he was staying in that hotel. And he's come over, "What's the problem?" And the landlord said, "What's your name?" He said, "I'm King Arthur." He said, "I've got Ben Gunn here, King Arthur, what's going on here?" Anyway, Ben got put to bed because he was too drunk, and he got up in the morning and he had a big breakfast and all that, and went, and he's saying to Paul, "Why didn't you turn up?" And Paul's going, "Why didn't you turn up?" Well, it turns out Ben went in the wrong hotel, so he fell down the stairs, smashed the mirror, slept in the bed, had the breakfast and cleared off. He wasn't even booked into that hotel. But these are the crazy things happening. People used to get so drunk they could hardly look after themselves, some of them. I mean, like Charlie Bell, he was so worried about Ben, I think, in France, getting home, that he's packed all Ben's suitcase and that, and then Ben got home all right, but Charlie forgot his own suitcase. I think he left it in France. Then Barry Levain come a deal once. He left all his suitcase on the train platform. Come back, all he had was a packet of cigars. And all the old timers were saying, as long as you've got your wallet and you can get the beers in,
exactly,
get the drink, you're all right. So, they were the first meetings in my career.
They sound great. They sound amazing, Sean.
Well, everyone was a character, you see, because you was entirely on your own. To open a tattoo shop, you needed lots of parts to your character. Like, you needed determination, because no one would rent you a shop. And then when you opened it, no one was going to help you. So, as well as a tattooist, you had to be everything. You had to be the cleaner, the doorman, the first aid man, because everybody fainted then. You don't get so many fainters now. But we was using big old needles and big old machines with big blue sparks. They were, you could probably drill the road with them. They would and the studios were full of, when you was busy, everyone was smoking. You had over filling ashtrays, so there was smoke, and then everyone was sweating, and you had no poor ventilation and that in the early studios were uncomfortable to be tattooed in. So everybody plus with all the fear and everything, because everyone was terrified, because tattoos hurt then, you know, so some people would faint just thinking about it. So you had a lot of fainters, you know.
Oh, really?
And they got very little sympathy, because tattooists were like, you know, grumpy old hard men, the early ones, you know, pull yourself together, you know, I've got a queue to get through, you know.
There's that video, I've seen that video of Jock where he's tattooing some poor kid, and then the kid passes out, and I think he just puts his head on top of that counter that he used to tattoo at. He just sort of rests him over the counter till he wakes up and just sits there.
Yeah, well, we used to just put their head between their knees and wait, you know. You know, I was quite sympathetic to them, but other tattooists weren't. You know, they'd start playing tricks on them, like putting their clock forward and all that. Put the shop clock forward was a favourite one, and their watch and that. So you've been out ages, mate. You owe me a few more quid. You've taken up my time, look. But I didn't do stuff like that. You know, I just wanted to get them back round so I could finish the tattoo.
Yeah, exactly. Get on to the next person.
You know, some tattoos used to pour water over them and all that. But yeah, we had a lot of fainters. Yeah, I know that video you're talking about with Jock. I think that was one of the HA.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, isn't it? Yeah.
That was interesting film, that, because that was the early HA. I think when they first come over from America, like you know, the franchise or whatever you want to call it from America. Sure. Yeah, so that was the early meetings in my career. But there was also a lot of other social stuff, because there was so few tattooists. The ones in an area, say like the southeast or the northeast or northwest, they all knew each other or knew of, you know, and down there, you know, someone would have like a barbecue or something like that, and everybody would go, or someone would, there'll be an excuse for a party, so we was partying all the time. And tattoo studios, when you was doing walk-ins and just doing queues of cartoons all the time, there was none of this emailing after work and stuff like that. So as soon as you turn the light off in the shop, you was free, you know. So we worked short hours. I used to open 12 noon till 5.
Yeah.
You know, I carried on, obviously, when it suited me in the summer. I'd work till midnight. But if you wanted to, you could just flick the light switch off, shut the door, and you was in the pub by 7 o'clock, you know, early evening. So there was a lot of heavy partying going on in the 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah, that was the conventions.
Did your mate Gary White go to those conventions, Sean?
All of them, yeah.
Did it?
Yeah.
How did you?
And we was very well known. Well, I walked into his. He came from Portsmouth. He used to tattoo the sailors off the ships round the clock. You know, you'd have a ship in. I mean, I'll arrange for you to speak to him so he can tell himself. But just to outline it, a ship used to come into Portsmouth with all the sailors on, and I think there was about 3,000 on the ship, and they would let off 1,000 at a time. I mean, I'm giving rough figures here. Gary would be more specific on the figures, but I think they'd let off 1,000 at a time. That obviously, when they've come off a ship, they would. The first thing is beer. They get pissed first. Yeah. Then they'd look for a hooker, and then lastly they'd get a tattooist, and it was a tattooist job to get the money off them before they spent it. You know, well, same as us inland. Like, you know, people would waste their wages, so we would try and get it off them before they spent it all. But with the sailors, you'd have 1,000 off the ship, and then when they had 24 hours getting pissed up and tattooed and puked on and fighting and everything else, they get back on the ship. Then they'd have a fresh 1,000 people off, all fresh to tattoo. You know, so he used to. Gary told me he never used to sleep or you know, he said if you got up to have a piss, like you was, you know, you was having a major break. He would just you know, they would tattoo them as fast as they get them in, get it fast as they could. Anyway, he then moved to Brighton, and Brighton's closer to me than Portsmouth.
Yeah, cool.
So Brighton's day trip to me. And I heard that he'd opened. So I wandered into his shop. I think that was about 82. And we hit it off immediately. And we become best buddies, you know. And Gary, like, he's a total, well, then he was a total, like, he was wild, you know. He was wild. Trust me. He'd do anything, Gary. You know, I don't know. I don't think he threw anyone off the actual pier, but that's the type of thing he'd do, you know. Oh, mate.
Where was his shop, Sean?
You know, he was on the end of the pier, at the very end.
Oh, bloody
You used to walk to the end of the pier, and he had a little lock up there. Before him, it was Bob Bunwick. So I had actually been in there before. Oh. Bob Bunwick was before Gary. Bob tattooed me. So Gary opened now. He can tell you some good stories about tattooing sailors and that.
What a great place to have a tattoo shop. He
tattooed there for years. Yeah, and he used to go to the convention. He went to them all, Gary. And we didn't miss a Dunstable one. We went to every Dunstable one, and I think I went to every old timers convention for about 20 odd years. And I think Gary, when I stopped going, Gary went to a few more. He went to about 25 of them without missing one. And he went to
clubs, Sean, wasn't there? Because I think when I first started getting into the history, I thought there was only a couple, but as you scratch the surface, there was actually quite a few, even like smaller tattoo clubs, wasn't there, that people were members of and stuff?
Well, yeah, but a lot of them were just to get a certificate on the wall.
Nice.
What it was, there weren't no printing then. It's hard to imagine now there weren't no printers. So even like you got some business cards printed, you look well professional. You know, you give someone a card, a customer, and I think, wow, this man, he knows what he's doing. You know, he's had cards printed. You know, because you used to have to go and pay a printer a fortune.
Yeah.
So anyone with a business card was well professional. So we had no qualifications as such. So this was before licensing as well. So if you had a certificate on the wall, you know, people used to go to a scratcher, you know, and they say, was he qualified? Yeah, we had all the certificates on the wall and that. Well, these certificates were like what tattooists sort of started their own club, and they would give their mates certificates, you know. Yeah. Some of them were made with letter set, you know, they had like all upper and lower case in the wrong place, spelling mistakes. You know, but the best one, or the most impressive looking in the 70s, 80s was the Tattoo Club of Japan. And all you had to do to be a member, you wrote to the master in Japan and told him you was a tattooist, and he would send you a certificate. So, and then you put that on the wall, and everyone would think you was the bees. You know, I've still got mine since 1980.
I've seen a couple of them. They look amazing, don't they?
Yeah, really nice certificates. And although they was giving them away to anyone that asked, you had to know the address to send to it, you know. So that was a secret. So it wasn't as free as I'm saying, because like you'd think, oh, cross, every tattooist writing off to them, but you had to know the address. And before the internet and that, addresses were the big thing. You know, you didn't know where to get the gear, so you had to win the trust of an old timer to give you an address. And that's why there was so much. You had to your tattoo shop, you had to do it like Fort Knox, you know, because people couldn't, anyone who wanted to be a tattooist, they didn't know where to get the gear, so they had to nick it, you know. So they had to break in your shop and steal it. So, you know, tattoo shops were like, I had bars on the windows and padlocks everywhere, you know, because because you'd get your stuff nicked.
Yeah, I've heard stories of people buying addresses off of old timers.
Oh yeah, that was the way to do it. You know, I think I've heard of tattooists selling their car to, you know, I think the going rate for an address in late 70s was £200, which don't sound much now, but
No,
then
but
you could buy it.
Yeah, if you think a swallow was £4.
You could buy a decent Ford Cortina for £200. So that, yeah, I'd heard of £200 was the price, but I had luck with addresses. I didn't buy any addresses.
Yeah.
I sort of, I think Gary might have even given me an address.
Oh, bless him.
I think he might have given me Panther Products was a good address.
That Jeff's?
No, that was no. Jeff was never a supplier.
Oh no, that was Eddie Fretwell.
Fretwell, that's it. You know, I was trying to figure. Yeah, Eddie Fretwell. And these early suppliers, you dealt with them personally. You know, you'd go. It's like Davis. Now it's a big company, Davis, isn't it? Well, I used to deal with old Charles Davis before even Eric Davis had it. You know, the old boy, and he would send you like brass tubes and he would write the receipts in the most beautiful handwriting, you know, the old-fashioned, real Victorian copperplate handwriting. I wish I kept them. You know, I used to just, you don't think, you know, just chuck them in the bin because it's only a receipt. Yeah. It's that was old Charles Davis. And then when he retired, he wrote a nice letter saying, I'm handing it over to my nephew, Eric and his wife, Patricia. They took it over and they took it on to the next level, which, you know, it was just handwriting stuff. They was like, I think they actually had a typewriter, you know. Blimey. And they used to type the catalogue out with a typewriter.
What's the link there, Sean? Just because I always get confused about this, because like, what's the link between the Davis family that were doing like selling stuff like that and Burchett? What's the link there?
Burchett, yeah, he was a relation of theirs. I mean, George Burchett, and a lot of those early ones, although they kept stuff a secret, if you offered them money, they had a price, you know. If you offered them enough, they would sell you stuff. You know, that if you offered them enough money, if you was loaded, they'd probably sell their own machine, you know. Yeah. So, I mean, George Burchett, as I understood it, he would sell bits and bobs, and then Davis, they were a relation of his. One of them was his uncle or something like that. And then they started selling bits and bobs, but they were related, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because
I mean, in the early
catalogue that they had.
Yeah, in the early catalogues, the early Davis ones, they typed out their family tree.
Oh, really?
It said like our links to Burchett. Yeah, it would say George. I think George had a brother, I think, and then his brother was something to do with the Davis, and then they started supplying. That's how it started. It was a brother and uncle. I'm not. That was before my time. The George Burchett. I mean, Davis wasn't before my time, but George. Although when I started tattooing, a lot of the old people that I was tattooing, they had work from the Burchetts, you know. Wow. I mean, George's son. What was his son's name?
Leslie.
No, not Leslie. Was it Leslie Burchett? Yeah. You know, I had school friends whose dad was tattooed by Leslie Burchett.
Wow, cool.
You know, I first got into tattooing by looking at tattoos on my mates' dads and that were tattooed by the Burchetts. Around here, everyone was tattooed by the Burchett's Waterloo Road or Charlie Bow down in Chatham.
Chatham, yeah.
I mean, and that was it. I mean, you know, when I opened my shop, there wasn't a tattooist for miles.
Wow.
You know, Jeff told me I was on his pitch. It's 60 miles away. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, what are you doing on my pitch?
That's wild, isn't it? Bless him.
I know.
What joker.
Barry Levane didn't like it much when I opened, and
What?
I mean,
He's in South London.
I know he was about 40 miles away, and we all became friends. You know, once they realised I was all right and I wasn't going anywhere. You know,
yeah,
I was determined, like you know. So
just took a few beers, having a few beers together, Sean, and then that was that sorted.
That's it. Well, yeah, you had to have the right attitude, though. You know, you had to. You know, I was like. They knew straight away I was one of their own, you know. So they took me under their wing, and I was the youngest one there. There weren't many people. I was a bit unique because I opened my high street shop at 21.
Yeah,
and a lot of established tattooists couldn't get a shop. You know, they was working from home, and that the big thing was a shop, not how good are you. They would say, "Have you got a shop?"
Yeah.
As soon as you had a shop, you got instant respect. Yeah, you got instant respect because it was so hard to open one, and when you open one, it wasn't easy to make a go of it because even though it was easy to make money in the summer, you made nothing in the winter, so you had to have that discipline to keep paying the rent in the winter. But of course, you had tattooists being so volatile as they were, you'd get someone who had the right ingredients to be a tattooist, but they would open up, earn a fortune in the summer, but they'd spend all the money. When the winter come, they'd get chucked out because they couldn't keep the rent going during the winter when there was no work. So you know, you had to have a lot for it. You had to be disciplined. You know, you had to make your money stretch. And there was a dark side to town because it attracted people that weren't the most honest people in the world.
Yeah.
Again, I don't offend anyone because a lot of the old, real old, long-established tattooists, they were straight as a die, you know. But there was a lot of tattooists that, you know, they had to get a living, you know, and they would, you know, they'd fence stolen gear or whatever. And that was part of tattooing, you know. But I find, you know, it's interesting how it's changed, you know, because it's gone from, you know, we was looked down on, and you know, we was, you know, my bank manager, you know, he said to me, "Can you earn a living doing this?" You know, and my first accountant, his words were because I had an accountant from day one.
Oh wow!
And my accountant, his exact words were to me, "Don't worry about paying tax," he said, "because the tax man ain't expecting you to earn any money doing this." You know, they thought we couldn't earn a breakfast. They thought, who wants a tattoo?
Well, that was quite good.
Yeah, so I'm not saying I took him at his word, but, you know.
That's a professional opinion, that is, Sean, isn't it?
Yeah. But no.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about is because I always ask people when I talk to people about this, is because there wasn't that many women tattooing, was there? Like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, but that we did briefly talk about Winnie Ayres, didn't we? I think last time.
Yeah, she tattooed me, Winnie. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk about her and that experience and
she's a great character. She was, you know, Winnie. She tattooed down in Aldershot, tattooed all the army. She was a proper tattooist, as in much she could handle the shop, you know. When you got a shop full of drunk soldiers, you know, you got to be able to handle them. Winnie could. I mean, there's an old newspaper article of her somewhere where she knocked out a geezer. Someone was taking liberties or something, and she just knocked him spark out. So she could handle it. And when I went in her shop, she used to work round the clock late at night. I mean, people said she used to get drunk and fall asleep tattooing you, but I didn't see her fall asleep. Not saying she didn't or did, but that was one of the stories. I didn't know her that well. I only went in there once and got tattooed by her, to be honest. But I liked her. She only had one needle in the shop, because at the time I went in when it was quiet, because she tattooed me and the needle come off the bar, which used to happen if you didn't have a good flux. The needle would the solder would break, it would come off the bar. Well, what would happen in them circumstances? You'd just grab another needle on the bar, but she didn't have one, so she had a bloke there who used to make her needles, and true showmanship, she knew I was a tattooist, but she said to me, I forget his name now, but she said, he's the best needle maker in the business, like. I said, yeah, all right, okay. He is sitting next to me. So he's making the needle up, and she put the needle on, and away we went again. But I had an eagle at the top of her arm. The eagle on her arm, I've seen it loads of times. It was on the wall, and when I picked it, she said, "Oh, I call that the Aldershot eagle." So her standard eagle, which was like, she did so many. She worked freehand straight off the machine, like Ron Ackers, no penning it on with a biro or nothing. Yeah. She went on my bare arm. She went away, done the Aldershot eagle. Nice tattoo, nice clean tattoo. Just basic shaded in brown with a bit of green on the wing. But I've seen in the army around Aldershot, I've seen thousands of them. You know, as soon as I see an old boy and I see the Aldershot eagle, you know, I know he was in the parachute regiment or the RCT or the catering corps, or one of them regiments somewhere around Aldershot. Wow. It was great. She and good tattooist, Winnie. Very good tattooist.
Was she friends with Jessie Knight then? Were they friends?
Yeah, I think she was, and Jack Zeek. She was friends with Jack Zeek and Jessie Knight. Oh. I think there's a photo of them somewhere, a rare photo of the three of them. Yeah. Jessie.
Did those two ever go to any of the meetups, Sean? Jessie or Winnie? Did they ever go?
A bit. They was a bit before me, Jessie and Winnie. Although still alive and all that. I didn't know Jessie Knight personally, but good friends of mine, the Bells, you know, Charlie Bell and Andy J in Rochester. Andy sent me a couple of years ago. He sent me Charlie's photo collection, and there was some original photos in there of Jessie Knight and Charlie Cash Cooper. Oh, wow. So I've put them in I redone the book, and I've put them in my book, you know, Tales from the Old School of Tattooing. Yeah. That's the latest version. It's got the photos of Jessie Knight and Cash Cooper in them. Not my photos. They were from Andy J. Kindly sent them to me, but they are from the late Charlie Bell's collection. Wow. Original photos.
Super cool.
So they hadn't been seen before. Cash working in his shop in the 1950s, and Jessie Knight from the 1950s. So that's how you know if you got an old copy of the book. If there's no photos in it, you still got all the spelling.
I the new one.
Yes, please do, Jack. Poverty-stricken tattooist like me. I love you from the bottom of my heart if you buy my book.
Where can people get the book from, Sean?
I'm easily bought. My price standards are very low. Amazon, yeah. Get it on Amazon.
Okay.
If you ain't got photos in your copy, it means you've got all the spelling mistakes and no photos. So the latest one, it's got photos in, a couple more stories, Jessie Knight, photos of Jessie Knight, Charlie Bell, some old photos of Charlie Bell when he was young.
Wow.
And his old, and there's a photo of his old, it's only a back door of his first shop. Even I didn't go to that. That was where the Chatham big shopping centre and multi-storey car park and all that is now. They knocked it down. but he was, Charlie had, his dad was a tattooist before him.
Yeah.
And I think it was Andy told me the story that Jesse Knight worked on Charlie Bell's shooting range at the fair. They was both tattooing then. Charlie Bell Senior was tattooing, so that would have been early 50s, maybe something like that. And Jesse Knight and the story was Charlie shot her in the arm on his shooting range. I wasn't sure whether it was a mistake or whether it's because she was tattooing or what, but that was a story. But then I read the story somewhere else, and it wasn't Charlie Bell, it's somebody else. So you never know, because stories get sort of distorted a bit, because we're not deliberately lying. We're we're going on memory alone.
Yeah.
Before we start. That's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I'm not really a writer. I didn't want to write it, but I felt someone had to. I wish someone else had done it who can write better than me, but nobody was doing it. I
think the book's amazing, Sean.
I felt it had to be told. I've put it in warts and all. I hope people ain't offended, but because tattooists always tried to do the opposite to what I've done. They used to, a few of the rogues used to try and put on a respectable image, because tattooing had such a bad name. They would say, all my customers, they're all dentists and solicitors and all this bullshit. But we all used to say it. I found myself saying it in the 80s. I say, my customers, they're teachers, they're the truth is, your customers were all, good old salt of the earth, working class, builders, football hooligans, all good people, so we was always trying to make ourselves respectable, but there was that, I wanted to tell the truth a bit more, and because it is respectable today, isn't it? So I feel that I can say about the darker side of it. So it's recorded, so people can know what it was. So that's why I did it, so people could know some of the stories and characters.
Names alive, don't you? You keep those names alive, and that history and those stories, and those, even the addresses that and all those things that you remember and stuff. It's important to keep those documented, isn't it? So, do you think you'd ever do another? Do you think you'd ever do another one, Sean? Because you've got so much knowledge and memory of all that time and stuff, and those tattooists and what you did and stuff. Do you think you'd ever do another one?
Yeah. Well, I feel there's not too much to write about the early do's and the early sort of. Most people prefer the first two chapters where I speak about that, about the early addresses, how it used to be, and then it just goes on to, as one critic has probably rightly said, what pissed up tattooists get up to, when they're not working. So it's a load of drunken stories, which, people that like a good party, have a good laugh about, and people that have got a sense of humour. But people are changing. We're getting the sense of humour bred out of us. Everything's so serious now, and everybody's so offended so easily. They just think we're a load of drunken animals. That the quicker we pop off, the better, sort of thing. So it's not for everybody. It is. And if I wrote another one, all I would be doing is telling more drunken stories, and it might get a bit boring after.
I don't know about that, mate, but
you're on our way.
Sign me up for number 2,
Jack. You like a laugh and that, and that's what we did. We enjoyed it. We were serious about tattooing. Gary was one of the best when he was right on his height. He could put on a real crisp clean tattoo very, very fast. And everybody was pleased with it and used to keep going back and back. So, you know, the stories where he's taking the mickey and that out of customers, a lot of tattooists did that. Yeah. You know, when I read back at it, I cringe a bit. Yeah. But they were pleased with our work. You know, they liked it. You know, when in my own shop, you know, I started, you know, when soon as people, I think the turning point was me when I couldn't tattoo anymore, was when people was bringing in phones and iPads and shoving them in my face instead of pointing to a cartoon on the wall and saying, you know, a panther with 3 legs or something, saying, I'll have that one. They was like putting a phone in my face, and not only, they weren't even showing me the picture. I was seeing half a dozen photos of their kids and food and their dinner and all that, and they're flicking through all these thousands of photos of their dinners they've been eating and their little snotty-nosed kids flicking through all these photos. I'll find it in a minute. And then they'd pass it to me, and they'd pass a black phone where the light had gone out. So I'm staring like a mug at a black screen. Don't know how to put the screen back to light again. I do now. I'm now speaking on a what's name phone, so-called smartphone. Yeah. Anything that says smart in front of it, smart motorway, smart meter, means it's crap, right? I'm starting to rant now, so I'll go back to the thing. So, so they get me this photo of some funny tattoo, you know, and then they want it upside down and that. Yeah. So, of course, I'm giving them short change. I'm saying, you know, what the hell does anyone want a tattoo upside down for and that? So, and you know, I'm basically chucking them out the shop. And then my son comes over, all quiet, nicely spoken, you know, Dad, you can't fucking talk to the fucking customers like that anymore, you know. Got a proper bollocking off of him. So that was it, you know. I thought, well, you know, I'm living in a different world now. Yeah. So it was only fair to everybody. Yeah. That
and now he's carrying the torch on for you.
Yeah, I'm very proud of him. He's doing it all how it should be done today.
Not
you know.
Surprised. Yeah, his work's amazing.
Yeah, he does stuff that, you know, I can't do, you know. He's exceeded my expectations, you know. I just wanted him to put, you know, clean tattoos on, clean hygienic tattoos like I did, but you know, he's exceeded me. He does portraiture and that you know, it's great the work they're doing. And the guy that works in the shop, Gavin, he's impressed me how his work's very, you know, it's right up there, you know.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how it's, because imagine if, you know, when you started, if someone would have said to you or showed you like what Josh's work is like now, you'd have never believed it, would you?
That's right. And so I saw online the other day, I mean, Loward is a very good friend of ours. I saw that there was him tattooing on the screens on Piccadilly Circus.
Oh, wow.
Now, when I thought of the contrast, we was all scratching about when we started. There was no apprentice when I started. Everyone was, you know, 99% of tattoos were self-taught.
Yeah, cool.
So we was all, you know, if we were honest, we was all scratching about in what we call backroom school. We was all scratching about to start with. And when I think of that struggle that a lot of good tattooists today, you know, had, and that we've gone from that, nobody wanted to speak to us. You know, you had to be brave just to go in a tattoo shop. You know, people used to pluck up the carriage to even walk in, to have a look. You know, just, you know, you get, you know, people that weren't rough, really working class, they wouldn't even go in, but they would build up the courage to sort of go and have a look. And going from that to like tattooing on the screens of Piccadilly Circus, we've gone as far as it can go, pretty much, you know, as far as artwork and respectability is, you know. Definitely. You don't get much more respectable than that. So
no, that's amazing, isn't it, mate? So cool.